The Apex community often thinks high damage numbers or high damage games are the key metric of one's skill. However, most players don't put up big damage numbers like 4000 damage, which is the highest damage badge in the game. In today's guide, I'll be teaching you how to hit 4K damage at the very least, maybe even more, and even though we borrow some strats from it, it won't necessarily be as huge as IitzTimmy's 9000 damage game, but it will be more than enough to impress your friends. Before we dive into the damage grinding strategy of the century, there's a few tweaks that you can do to your ordinary gameplay to increase your damage by quite a bit, starting with your loadout. I found that switching away from damage efficient weapons with a high damage per second with a closer range such as the R99, the car SMG, or the Volt, or shotguns such as the EVA 8, Peacekeeper, Mozambique, or Mastiff, in favor of mid to longer range, mid-range weapons, but with a slower rate of fire naturally will make you get higher damage. Make sure to toss out 2x or 3x on top of them for even better results. This is because the one clip potential naturally is just a lot lower, and your enemies will generally tank 50 to 150 damage before stepping behind cover and healing themselves up. So if you make a conscious effort to keep stripping them down of health whenever they reveal themselves, an enemy can turn from about 200 damage per kill to hundreds, if not even up to 1000 if the enemy is stubborn enough and you manage to draw out the fight just the right way. The key is to keep doing as much poke damage as possible. You want to find a reason to keep shooting at any range and at any stage of the fight. Ideally, you'll want to continue backing up if your enemies start moving in to ensure that you get as much damage in on them as possible. Just be careful not to put your back against the wall, and be careful of yourself getting third-partied by stalling a fight out for too long. Poking a team for damage for a longer period of time guarantees that any other team in area will also be looking for a piece of that cake. Now, they're probably not going to be looking for damage, they're just gonna try to kill you both. But if other teams do pull up, you can apply the same strategy as well. Just make sure to keep rotating and poking your enemies, and if they push in, either escape or try to close out the fight fast enough to avoid trapping yourself with third parties in your face. Always look to position yourself around high grounds, but make sure that you don't get stuck in one position, and keep a light footwork to avoid getting swamped by all the other teams. Besides that, you might also be leaving a lot of damage on the table every play session. That's because damage against down opponents also counts towards your own damage numbers. That means that if you manage to get a knock, you can finish your own knock with your weapon for a 300 damage. Finishing down enemies is a good idea if you know that you can't let the enemies get revived, or if you're about to chase down the last member of the team, because if you let the enemies die without you finishing them, that removes up to 200 free damage that could have counted towards your own damage in the very end. But you can also finish knocked enemies that have been down from your teammates or even enemies to boost your damage as well, meaning that you might want to finish the down enemies on the floor if you're rolling in as the third party, but the last members of those squads are far to be seen. Besides this, you're going to find opportunities where you can abuse the enemy teams for free damage. These opportunities will present themselves in almost every game that you play, and usually involve you being in a good position, with the enemy teams also being in a decent position, but unable to push you due to the map geography or surrounding teams stopping anyone from engaging in a full fight. Examples of these opportunities can be your team holding a god spot or high ground with one or many teams rotating around you, and if you put enough damage down, they won't be inclined to push you, and every time they expose themselves, you have a free shot to get even more damage in. It can also be an enemy team holding that god spot or position, with your own team being able to poke them whenever they peek out to show presence. You might not be able to close the gap, but a team staying on a high ground for too long won't be likely to push you, since they're betting on you pushing into them and dying to the positional disadvantage. This can be abused for a lot of damage, which actually helped Timmy get his 9000 damage game, so everyone does it. And of course, you can also find 2 or more teams fighting each other, or just poking at each other without pushing in. This is a great opportunity to damage both sides and stall the fight out for even longer. As I said, these opportunities will present themselves several times over the course of a game, as long as you keep yourself close enough to enemy teams. And you can abuse each and every one of these opportunities for hundreds, if not 1000 or more damage, but you need to know when to pull the plug and either back off from a team fight or just kill the enemy team entirely, which is usually if they overextend and get too close, or if more teams show up, at which point you'll want to try to disengage from the fight and reset. And honestly, doing these adjustments to your overall gameplay strategy might be all you need to do to go from 2000 damage to 3000 or maybe even 4000 damage. But I promise you a great strategy, and there is one way to easily cheese yourself a 4000 damage badge or even more, and that baby is called a charge rifle. It's an easy to use weapon with a low damage per second at any range, and the chance of knocking someone with it is very low, unlike other snipers such as the Sentinel or Longbow, making it the perfect weapon for this strat, which I myself have used for a few games when I needed to prove to my chat just how easy it is to get a high damage game. But before I explain the strategy, of course make sure that you're like the 18% watching my videos and that you've hit the subscribe button. This really helps me out and would mean a lot to get us closer to the 200,000 Ottr gang members. Really appreciate you guys so far. We've been growing so fast. Anyway, the strat can be pulled off either as a solo no-filling player or in a full stack. Being in a full stack is easier, and obviously keep in mind playing with randoms might make it a bit difficult to pull off the resets or getting the rotations that you need for maximum damage. Anyways, start off your game by landing a little bit safer than usual and look around for your charge rifle. Some maps have static spawns where you're guaranteed to find sniper rifles, such as the solar array on Olympus or the sniper towers on Kings Canyon. You want to find your charge rifle along with a scope. I'd suggest a 4 to 8x and a lot of ammo. Once you have your weapons, the sniper ammo, and some heals, it's showtime, baby. Rotate to any central map point while listening for gunshots, then simply make your way over once you know where to go. Get close enough to the fighting where you have a good view of the fighting teams, and then take a high ground which lets you see them and the surrounding areas. Then all that's left to do is to start shooting. Try to hit enemies on both sides of the fight to draw it out, never shooting the ones that seem to be in low health, and think twice before shooting enemies that are down. One full shot of the charge rifle won't be enough to finish someone, but it will finish them if they already have taken damage prior after being knocked, and it's in your best interest to keep them alive for as long as possible. Drawing the fight out also has the added benefit of inviting the rest of the server to fight. You can use this to your advantage and start charge rifling any third parties that may roll up. If someone takes attention to you, keep lighting them up with the charge rifle until you feel that they start getting a little bit too close or start focusing you hard enough, at which point you need to switch up your angle and probably fall back a little bit. You can still try to play around the same area, but you probably have to stay away from your old vantage point until it cools down for a little bit. If you're playing on a more open map, you can also position yourself at a vantage point that covers anywhere central where teams generally rotate through, with bonus points if they have to cross a vast open area to join that third party. This gives you free, easy shots on enemies in the open who really can't and might not even want to push you since they aren't the third party that they're heading for. And you're going to be able to keep backing off and taking high grounds all the way into late game. Just make sure that you keep leveraging two teams against each other so they never get a chance to fully focus you. For example, in this game, I managed to hold an unpushable high ground in a tiny final ring, continuing to farm damage while there wasn't nothing that they could do except shooting back. Hell, I really only lost because I ran out of heals. There's obviously some more details regarding this strategy, but that's the gist of it. Give it a try and let me know how it went in the comments. If you want to see that specific game that I just mentioned, check out the video on the screen. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all tomorrow.
Well, 4K is coming now. Wonder how hard we can push it. Like, oh my god.
Guess I'm the new kill leader. Go me. Not that far. I love it when that happens.
I don't know. I feel like this is kind of low-key fun content. Like, just like literally griefing entire teams. Just making them so angry to the point where they're gonna smash their headsets. Oh my god.